time to dive into the For FF's Sake podcast. FF's Sake podcast. The place for your weekly dose of fantasy football advice, breakdown, and debate. Redraft, dynasty, sleepers, and buy or sell candidates. It all gets discussed right here. Now, let's go to your hosts, two guys that say the other is an idiot. Ian Steele and Evan Harris.
Welcome into the For FF's Sake podcast, week number 2. Evan Harris here, and that other guy, no, I'm just kidding, Ian Steele, my co-host, who absolutely kicked my tail last week in some predictions. Don't get used to it. It's going to be the only one, all right? That's it.
No, it feels right. Feels comfortable.
Well, you didn't just kick my butt in that. I had some brutal weeks. It was a tough week 1 in fantasy football for me, but I'm ready. I'm like Devontae Adams, okay? Flush it and respond. And I'm ready to respond this week. If you didn't see that tweet, I'll put it up above us in the YouTube clip.
I guess because like Devontae, your week was doo-doo also. So,
we're not going like Odell Beckham doo-doo, okay? We're not getting that creepy, but yes, it was not too fun. We got some report card grades. We'll get to that in just a minute, but we're going to start us off with the news, and there's a lot of news in the NFL world to consider when you're talking fantasy football. You want to kick us off with really one of the top stories in fantasy football news, that is.
Yeah, he obviously came out looking pretty good early on, and then Jerry Jeudy is going to be out 6 to 8 weeks with a high ankle sprain. And I personally think with the way that he runs routes, it could be pushing towards the latter more so than the former before he's able to really come back on the field and do Jerry Jeudy things. So it's a tough one because he looked really, really good early on.
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy, a lot of people are expecting that like week or season 2 breakout for him. A lot of guys like those receivers in their sophomore years. And I mean, he looked like the number 1 target on an offense, despite a Cortland Sutton out there who everybody's thinking is about back healthy, with Teddy Bridgewater, who you can say what you want about him, but supported 3 top 25 receivers last year in Carolina. So I was expecting him to do some big things. I had some shares of him as well. The injury news kind of stinks for him, really puts a damper, because even when he does get back, you got conditioning and things like that. How is he going to be able to finish out his season? He might be a buy low candidate right now, and that might be a story for another podcast, but
yeah, perhaps
just some thoughts there. We wrote down Fitzmagic in our notes pre-podcast here. Fitzmagic, RIP, probably going to be a career. I mean, we're getting really close. I mean, what am I kidding? He's going to be a backup somewhere and come back and supplant the starter because that's just what he does. He's Fitzmagic. But I'm excited about Tyler Heinicke. I think the Fitzmagic injury news is more about Heinicke than it is about Fitzmagic. I think that you look at him and his numbers last year in the playoffs. Maybe the Bucs were sleeping on him, but he was the best quarterback against the Bucs in that playoff run. I think he's got some fun tools. I think he will be a better fantasy quarterback than NFL quarterback, just because he's going to use his legs. He's going to move around. And really, you just got to dump the ball off to Gibson, throw quick outs to Logan Thomas, and get it anywhere in the vicinity of Terry McLaurin, and you're going to be just fine.
Yeah. Do you think they go out and get Cam?
No.
A little bit of a revisit.
I think if Heinicke gets injured, you look for possibly Cam to get picked up, but that's about the only way that happens.
Okay. Next one is one that, I mean, come on. We all expected it. It just happened a little earlier than we thought. Raheem Mostert, done for the season, came out and said it himself. Chip cartilage in his knee. I mean, that's another one that could be a career. I mean, it's just been barren. 59 games out of a possible 113. He really hasn't done it for any kind of period of time. He's been great when he's healthy, but it's just so infrequent. It's such a frustrating thing to watch. I'm sure he's more frustrated.
It's interesting that a lot of people are projecting Elijah Mitchell to kind of step into that Mostert role. They're very similar players. Not a lot of draft capital. Mitchell battled a ton of injuries in college. He's an older rookie. So I think it's interesting. He's got the speed too, but how long before he's hurt? I would not put too much stock in Mitchell just for that reason, and a few others we might talk about later as well. Yeah, Mostert's a guy that you probably spent a first 3-round pick on in redraft. If you picked him up in Dynasty and started your Dynasty anytime within the last, maybe not this year, but 2 years prior, he was a top 5-round pick. There was a lot of expectations for this guy, and if you have a lot invested in him, I'm sorry for you. I hope that you got some handcuffs or spent probably too much waiver wire money this week.
Yeah.
So, and one to throw in with him, you put it not near as much, I guess, production, but Rashad Penny, like, can that guy stay healthy? If I'm Rashad Penny, I'm getting far, far, far away from football. Like, it's just not good for you at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. It's frustrating, but the reason I put it in there is it helps Carson, because when Penny's around, he's somebody that for whatever reason Pete Carroll likes, so he always tries to feature him a little bit, and it just takes away from Carson's ceiling. So I think this is fire him up. If he's healthy, Carson's going to be borderline RB1 for the rest of the season. So
this is so weird that the Carson story in Seattle is so similar to the James Robinson story in Jacksonville. They draft a first-round running back, Travis Etienne. Etienne gets hurt. Now, I think we all kind of have higher expectations for Etienne than anybody had for Penny. I don't know. I don't remember much about Penny coming out, but it's a really neat story to kind of tie together over the next few years and kind of see how Etienne bounces back from that fracture.
Yeah, for sure.
Moving on, report cards. Do we have to, do we?
We do. Actually, and I want to make sure that this is a little, I want you to put this on the screen when you I'll let you take it away though.
It was brutal. Let's just be honest. I had some bad takes. All right. There were some takes that early on I thought were going to be better. I think I should get to defend 2 takes really, really quick. Okay. First one, Najee Harris, he got the volume. You were right. Tough matchup, Bills defense. He got more volume than even I thought, though. I mean, he got every single snap of the running back snaps there. Couldn't put it all together. I looked at, you can pull up on YouTube where you can see every play that they played in. I went back and watched every carry. Out of his 16 carries, 14 of them, he got hit in the backfield and still managed to gain some yards. So I have high hopes moving forward. It was a rough week 1. I probably should have been on the lookout for that. Quez Watkins. All right. He was my sleeper pick. Thought he was going to score a touchdown. I still have high hopes for Quez Watkins. I'm not saying he's a wide receiver 1, 2. Let's not get crazy. I have high hopes for Watkins as a flex play. He came out, Ian, the first 3 passes that left the glorious left hand of Jalen Hurts all went to Quez Watkins. 3 catches, 3 targets, and then they never target him again. What the heck was going? I think you called somebody. You got like mafia people down there in Florida or something. You just made a phone call.
Hey, when you
probably
know
Bill too well.
I do. I know Bill all right.
So
yeah,
it was a rough week.
One. It was a tough one. But like I said to you, Philadelphia, all they do is disappoint you. So you're welcome. Yeah, mine was a little bit better. Again, we're gonna have Evan throw the grades up on the screen. What we did was we compared their projected points in a half PPR format that we both play in compared to what they actually scored, and then we got a differential there. So there was quite the differential between my takes and Evan's. But I'm sure he'll have a better week 2.
Quite, let's not get crazy. We'll see how it goes. I'm more dialed in this week. All right. I'm not going to be too bold this week. Yeah. Something like that. All right. Let's jump into things because we're already pretty good ways into the show here. Let's go for a title, Chutes and Ladders. Ian, you titled this. This is Bounce Backs and Flashes in the Pan. Let's start with our bounce backs first. Guys that you think may have not done too well in week 1, but are definitely going to bounce back week 2, and you need to make sure you are playing in your roster.
Yeah. First one for me is an obvious one. Aaron Jones as a running back. you just got to ignore everything you saw from Green Bay week 1. I don't know what happened, whether that was some sort of junior high school wearing Green Bay gear. I don't know, but yeah, they just looked so out of sync. I don't expect that to happen again. And they have a pretty nice matchup week 2 to get right. So Aaron Jones is my first bounce back to come and do what Aaron Jones does.
All right. So bounce back, running back. We're going to pick and choose where we throw in our debates this week. I'm not going to debate that one. I think Jones could have a decent bounce back week. Hard not to bounce back from that disappointing performance last week. If the Packers don't bounce back this week, sound the alarms. What is going on in Green Bay? My bounce back running back, it's an easy one. All right. I told you I'm not being bold this week. It is hard not to bounce back from negative pointage. And if you started Ronald Jones, that's what you got. Hopefully you started him in your flex or not at all. The running back room in Tampa is so weird. Bruce Arians, you do one thing bad. Hey, get on the pine. All right. You can play end guard and tackle for the rest of the game. Sit at the end of the bench, guard the water bottles, and tackle anybody that comes close if you fumble my football. So that's what happened to Ronald Jones last week. But I do think he's got a good bounce back this week. I think that they know he's probably the most talented running back on the roster. I think that they have guys like Bernard and Fournette that they can trust in, but I think Jones offers the biggest upside for them. I'd look for him to bounce back. And if you're playing him in your flex spot, I think that you can count on him for a good 10 to 12 point week this week.
Yeah. I wouldn't be arguing that one. I think that's a decent take there. My receiver, another Tampa Bay player, another guy that mysteriously didn't really perform when every receiver it seemed like did, Mike Evans. But I look back actually when I was looking into this, and he seems to start pretty slow. Like of his career, I think other than in 2 or 3 games, his first weeks have all been 6 to 8 point weeks, which is not what you expect from Mike Evans. So
he's like the anti-Sammy Watkins.
Yeah. yeah. He starts off slow and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's Mike Evans. That's the guy I need. And a couple touchdowns and 60 yards week 2. So again, this is a nice matchup for them against Atlanta. Just got torched week 1. And Brady's always been pretty good in his career to give everybody a fair shake of the pie. And so I think Mike Evans is going to get a little bit of attention this week.
So if I'm going to debate one, this will be the one I debate. And I'm not like saying that Mike Evans is just going to be absolutely terrible the rest of the season, but I do think it might take a little bit more time for him to get adjusted. And it's not entirely his fault. I think a big part of it is you look at guys like AB and Gronk, who came on later in the season, came on in the playoffs, and it almost looks like Brady's more comfortable throwing them the ball. I watched that game, and a lot of the throws to Mike Evans were a little behind him, or they would get tipped, or it almost seemed like he got frustrated way too early in that game. So Mike Evans will be my guy that I'm not completely sold on this week. Look, if you drafted him, you're probably starting him. If you traded for him, you probably gave up way too much not to start him, and we'll have some takes like that. But he's a guy that I'm not completely banking on this week. I think Godwin is going to be the number one in that offense. I think kind of like Jones, they feel like he's probably one of their more talented guys. Evans has made his bank on deep shots, catching, over the defenders' heads. And that's not really Brady's game. Brady wants you crisp out of your cuts. He wants you in a spot. And I just think that Godwin, AB, and Gronk are going to continue to take targets from him. He's not going to have that same volume. He's going to have to make 5 to 6 targets work. Can he do that? Absolutely. He's an incredible talent. I just think it's going to take some time for him to adjust to start of this season. Good matchup, though. My bounce back receiver is going to be Davante Adams. Again, Green Bay Packer. Not hard to bounce back. You went Green Bay running back. I took the receiver. Davante Adams, he finished with like 8 points or somewhere in there for redraft, depending on if you're half PPR or PPR. But that's not what you drafted Davante Adams to be. Some people drafted Adams in the first round, early second round. I think Adams is going to have a big bounce back this week. I think a lot of that's going to be on Aaron Rodgers, who, if we had a bounce back quarterback, he'd probably be like the only vote. He finished 35th amongst quarterback ratings, and there's 32 teams. Yeah. So it was a pretty rough week all the way around. I think Adams is a guy who's going to bounce back. Sexy matchup this week, and going to be fun to watch on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm not going to even attempt to argue that one. That's a slam dunk, yeah, for sure.
All right, so we got our flash in the pans, guys that we just think were really good in that last week, that if you can trade them, do it now. Maybe not that bold, but guys that we don't expect to live up to that same performance in week 2. I'm going to start with our flash in the pan running back, and my guy is Melvin Gordon. Let me just throw this out there. Melvin Gordon was 170-yard touchdown run away in the fourth quarter where the game was already decided, and that's why he was getting touches, from being absolutely irrelevant and possibly even a waiver wire guy this week. He got outsnapped by the rookie, Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams, I think, is an incredible talent. He's going to take the reins on that room very, very soon. Gordon, obviously talented. I'm not taking that away. But I think if we go back each season, he always seems to have like a random fourth quarter breakaway run where the team probably would have rathered him like lay down at the 20 so they can knee it out or something. But that didn't happen. Melvin Gordon disappointing his coaches, and he's going to disappoint you this week if you start him in fantasy football.
Yeah, and he really disappointed me last week because his 70-yard TD cost me a W. So I won't be arguing that one. I think he's a scumbag, and I think he should retire.
That might be the bold part of that.
Yeah, and his dreads are terrible. Anyways, my flash in the pan this week will be Tyson Williams. Well done, whoever grabbed him and played him this week. That was a bold move, and it paid off for a lot of people, I'm sure. But for me, what was concerning was after about halftime, they started to really fade Tyson Williams, and then they started to feature Latavius Murray, which when he's only been in the locker room for, was it even a week? It was less than a week, I think, like 5-6 days. That's concerning. I think Latavius Murray is much more a Baltimore archetype running back. And so I think while he will have value, he's going to be ultimately going to be playing number 2 to Latavius, if not this week onwards. I think week 3 and afterwards, no doubt.
Yeah, if you're one of those people that were like, oh, Latavius Murray's washed, I'm not going to pick him up, I'm not going to try to trade for him. You didn't watch football last year. I think the guy averaged like 4.5 a carry last year. The Saints cut him for money issues, and that's the only reason. The fact that I think Tony Jones is going to be a pretty good player.
Yeah, he's very similar player, big body.
Compliments well. They were playing Murray last week in the second half of that game, and literally Lamar Jackson was like, hey, you're going to run here, like this hole over here, because he didn't know the plays. Yeah. So I think he's only going to continue to take snaps. I agree with that take. I would be fading Tyson Williams, although if I'm playing somebody that has him, I hope that they start him. He's one of those guys like Melvin Gordon, 135-yard run away, and it's a minuscule week. I guess you could probably say that about a lot of guys. All right, yeah. Give me your flash in the pan receiver.
Well, he's the ultimate flash in the pan receiver, and that's Christian Kirk. I think every season he has 4 or 5 games where he puts up 25 plus points, because he just has that ability to do that, but he's just not a featured player in the offense. And Rondale Moore did exactly what I thought he would do. He got a lot of checkdowns from Kyler Murray. He looked really busy along the line of scrimmage. So Christian Kirk's only going to be relevant when they're playing a poor secondary like they did week 1. Otherwise, I think you're going to see a lot of, D-Hop is an automatic, and Rondale Moore, I think, will eat away at some of those targets. So Christian Kirk's a guy that if you got him on waivers and there was a bunch of other people, trade him high. Like trade him away now high and get something else. Get somebody else that you think might be more consistent.
So I find it a little interesting. I'm not going to argue the take, but I do find it a little interesting that you're so low on Kirk and so high on Moore, because I think they're going to be very similar fantasy lives. I think that Moore is going to have those games where he breaks out for 20 points because he's featured in the offense that week. And then he's going to fade into oblivion because he's not featured in the offense that week. I just think they're similar players, and like in terms of how they're going to be used.
Well, this week he had Moore, I'm talking about, had 14 routes that he ran, and he was targeted on 5 of them. So I think he's going to be featured. He was a second-round pick. I said third last week. second-round pick. Really, really busy. He's going to be like a Debo, like an A.J. Brown, smaller body, but where they're going to get the ball to him in short yardage and just let him just go.
I will admittedly say I've been low on him, probably way too much. He probably is going to outperform kind of my expectations, but we'll see what happens. He did get, I do want to say that he got out targeted technically by those 3 receivers I said he was going to get out targeted by last week. Just throwing it out there. He did not run as many routes, but I got to take small victories when I got like beat down like I did. Okay. My flash in the pan receiver is going to be Sterling Shepard. Sterling Shepard, 20 points last week. You can pretty much like interchange Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton. They're the same guy on the same offense. One week, one of them might go off. The next week, the other one might, and then you forget about them for half the season. And no matter what they do, you can't trade them because they just don't hold the value that you want to trade them at. So I think Sterling Shepard will not bounce back this week. I forget who the Giants are playing. That was part of the reason I wanted to use him. Now I'm going to have to glance really quickly. Washington. Oh, yeah, Thursday night. So they're playing Washington, who has a pretty good front four. Daniel Jones and that terrible, terrible offensive line in front of him is not going to have a pretty night. So I don't think he's going to have time to throw those deep shots to Sterling Shepard. He got 20 points this week. Awesome. I would say 90% of the people rostered him probably didn't start him. And if they did, it was by accident. Or you just have a rebuilding team that's terrible. Like that's why you started Sterling Shepard. Yeah.
Well, I obviously at this point didn't argue any of your players, so I'm gonna do my best to argue for fantasy's sake. The Shepard.
Let's go.
I don't think he's a season-long play. I agree with that. He's a guy that's a constant headache because he has a constant headache because he's always concussed. However, I think we're 1 week away from Barkley being back to fantasy relevance. I don't think it's week 2. I don't because of that exactly for that front four. So I think week 3 onwards, Barkley is going to siphon a bunch of those targets. And the same goes for Golladay. He's not quite there. He's getting healthier, but he's not quite there yet. So I think week 2, you can roll Sterling Shepard out and expect okay production. Not 20 points. Don't expect 20 points, but double digit. I think you can get double digit out of him week 2. And then if you do get back-to-back solid weeks, trade his ass as fast as you can.
I was just about to say, so if Shepard gets like 13, 14 points, how fast is he on the trade block?
Monday at what time does the game usually finish? Like 11:45? Yeah. 11:46.
Either that or you actually put a receiver that's better than him up on the block so people go look at your roster and you'd be like, well, I'd actually maybe give up Shepard. So you might be able to get some value.
Game plans here. Okay.
Well, it is what it is. All right, we're going to move on. We're trying to be cognizant of time here and trying to get the show close to 30 minutes. So if we feel a little rushed that week, we'll continue to work on some of these kinks. But studs and duds, these are guys that we expect to be studs for week 2 of your fantasy football week, and guys that we expect to not be that duds. So we'll start it off here. Would you like me to kick off the honors?
Go ahead.
We've been going.
Fanfare going.
What?
Get your fanfare going. It's not the first time, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to hear Evan salivate over this individual player. So we're going to let him go with it.
Well, you know what? I'm going to go stud receiver first because we've been going running back so much. So before we talk about the holy one, we'll talk about receivers first. Okay. So stud receivers for this week. I just traded for him in a league. And I lost Adams in that trade. There's a lot of pieces to that, but I don't feel terrible about getting this guy in return. And it's Cooper Kupp. Me and you've talked about it, Ian. We knew that the receivers in that offense and that Rams offense with Matty Stafford back there were going to have a good little uptick in some value. And I think Kupp is one of those guys. And he just looked like Stafford's best friend out there. I mean, 10 targets, should have had 2 touchdowns, was like an inch away from having 2 touchdowns, just had 1, 9 catches on those 10. And the touchdown where he was schemed butt naked open, like butt naked, 20 yards, nobody around this guy, that open. That's going to consistently be a thing. Cooper Kupp's going to get behind defenses. I'm excited about him in week 2, and he's playing a defense that isn't too stagnant, and that's the Indianapolis Colts. You heard me bash them last week. I think the Colts have an okay defense, but they're just going to be on the field way too much to keep up. And their defensive coordinator is not going to be able to keep up with Sean McVay's scheme. That's just my opinion. So Kupp's going to be that guy that you can roll out there and be very confident on. You drafted him as your wide receiver 2, 3. I think he's going to continue to put up wide receiver 1 numbers in week 2.
Yeah, I like it. I love the Rams receiving core right now. Even going down to their supplementary pieces, guys like Van Jefferson. Not for fantasy, but just for football's sake. They're just so fun to watch. So I 100% agree with that take. My guy for week 2, he's kind of a bounce back as well. Calvin Ridley had a little quiet one. Not bad though. Like 8, I think it was like 8 points in most leagues, somewhere around there. Had an okay week, but he's going up against Tampa's secondary that just got torched by Dak. Obviously, Brady was throwing the ball all over against a questionable run defense in Dallas. They were throwing the ball a lot. So I think it's going to be a shootout game, and he's all they've got. I mean, Pitts might get some action, but other than that, I mean, Ridley is the guy. So he's not going to have another bad week, and I think he's prime for a big week. He torched them last season, and I think he's going to do the same thing.
You know, it's interesting that he had an okay week, but he still almost could be a bounce back guy just because he didn't necessarily live up to what people are drafting him to be. Calvin Ridley, when he's healthy, man, is just a mismatch. He's so quick. Don't look at his size. A lot like Devontae Smith, we learned in week 1. Don't look at his size. He can get past defenders and he can score touchdowns. And I trust that the Falcons are going to bounce back offensively at least in week 2. So I like that take. Won't argue it too much. Go ahead and give us, because I want to make sure I end with the best player in all this. Okay, so go ahead and give us your stud running back.
Don't make me argue it. I'll argue it just for the sake of it. My stud running back is actually homage to your take last week, but I'm gonna make the right one. Najee Harris this week is gonna have a huge week. I think at least again another bounce back candidate if you like. Like Evan said earlier, 100% of snaps. Nobody else touched the ball, and the matchup week 2 is delicious. So, yeah, I think if you don't, well, you've drafted him, you're going to play him, but I think this week you're going to feel pretty good about the production that he's going to put out there versus last week where you're like, what the heck, man?
Yeah, so I made a TikTok video last week on Corey Davis. That take was my best take of the week, and it wasn't on our pod. It was on TikTok. So if you want to get the good takes from me, you got to go to TikTok. Follow us there for FF's sake. Shameless plug real quick. But I said in that TikTok video, I was like, look, if you want to trade for Corey Davis, you better do it now. You got 24 hours because his value is going to go up, right? I think probably the same thing for Najee Harris now. You're not going to get him in Dynasty, so don't even try. But in redraft, if you're going to try to go get that guy, this is probably the time to do it. Because if they're contemplating trading him 1 week after a good week, they're not going to. They'll hold on to him for 5 weeks just to get that back. So I think that's a good take. All right, let's get to I wanted to use this guy as a bounce back before we even get into it. But Ian said no because he did okay, whatever, bullcrap. So Antonio Gibson had a great.
I think you get a ceiling, actually.
Yeah, the stupidity of that comment left me speechless. Okay. Antonio, the GOAT Gibson. All right. I've been really high on this. That's why me and Ian are kind of joking back and forth, but legitimately, I think Antonio Gibson is going to be in that CMC role that CMC was early in his career and still is. I'm not saying he is CMC, but you look at last week, carried a lot of the passing touches. He scored just over 10 points in half PPR formats without a touchdown. It's because I think he had like 5 or 6 catches. He had 118 or 108 yards total on the day. A really good day overall for him. He just didn't get in the end zone. If he's in the end zone, we're talking about him as an RB1 moving into week 2. I think obviously you probably drafted him to be your RB2. Some people drafted him to be RB1. His value shot up late in redrafts. But I think this is a guy, and this is why he's my stud of the week and why I thought he could be a bounce back, not to ramble too much, is I think Antonio Gibson loves the big stage. He loves the lights. We got to see what he did last year against Dallas on that Thursday night Thanksgiving game where all the lights were bright and he just came out. And that same thing's going to happen against a not very good New York team on Thursday night. If you have him, don't start him in your flex on Thursday, but start him as your running back. And I think he's going to go 20 plus points, 20 plus double.
Bold take.
Bold? Really?
20 plus is bold, but I don't disagree with the take. I think he's going to have a good week.
All right. What else? Do we have anything else? We got our duds, don't we?
Yeah, we got duds. Yeah.
Okay. Duds. So I made you go first a little bit ago. I'll go dud running back Saquon Barkley, same game, Thursday night game. This one to me feels like I have sand coming out of my mouth as I say it, because Saquon Barkley is one of those talents where you really don't want to be too bold, right? Because he can come out and just make you look stupid because he's one of those generational talents. But I do think that they are trying to ease Saquon back in. I think that's smart. Coming off a short week where he, I think, only had 10 carries in that first game, 11 total touches. I don't think they're going to do much for him. I think the scheme is going to keep him out of the game. And I think Washington's defense is really, really, really good. So for that case, I say if you have Saquon and you probably drafted him in the first round, this is actually a guy that you need to bench this week. If you have a guy that normally could be a flex running back, bump him up and have another flex guy to put in there, because Saquon's a guy that I don't think you're going to see a bounce back out. I mean, I think 8 points is optimistic.
Yeah, I don't hate that as well. And I hope if you did go for Saquon in the first round or early second, which is where he was going, you got a more solid play a few rounds later, guy like a Damian Harris that this week you can play, you can start and then maybe flex a receiver or maybe flex Javonte Williams or somebody else, and just kind of wait and see on Saquon, because it's going to hurt more if you play him out there and then he puts up a dud. So,
all right. So that was my dud running back, and we'll go dud receiver for you before we do running back.
All right. Yeah. My dud receiver is Juju Smith-Schuster.
Yep. I'm debating this one. Go ahead. Give me your terrible take. Let's hear it.
Well, the reason why is, and for me, he's the most consistently overprojected player in fantasy. Ever since the 2018 breakout, every single week he's like 15 to 20 points, and I just don't ever see the production. So that's why, I don't think he's going to have a goose egg or anything else, but I think he was going to be like 7 or 8 points. The only time he's going to be relevant, if he catches a touchdown, he'll be relevant, obviously. But other than that, it's just not the offense. And I don't think the game script is going to be dialed up for him. It's going to be like for Najee and Deontay. So I just think Juju is really the third or fourth look in the offense now. And he's just a disappointment constantly for me. So that's why.
So I'm not just going to call your take stupid. I'm actually going to try to argue this with some good football takes. Okay. So first, I'm going to say their opponent being Las Vegas. They have a good pass rush with Max Crosby, Carl Nassib. You got to see that front four get after it a little bit last week in that Baltimore game, which really ended up being the difference almost, that along with some Derek Carr heroics, right? So I do think that they're not going to have as much time to throw. And with that being said, they're going to look towards the slot, which is where Juju Smith-Schuster plays. Juju's average rank of depth in his targets right now has been pretty low, but that's because they're playing him in the slot more. He's catching balls more closer to the line of scrimmage, and he's still one of those guys that has some yak ability. As soon as he catches it, he can cut upfield and get there quick. He had 8 targets last week, only caught 4 of those. I think Juju Smith-Schuster easily is a guy that don't be shocked to see him get 8 targets again. Can he convert more than 50% of them? And is one of those close to the red zone where he can take off? Juju's going to consistently be one of those guys, I think, that is going to be, because he's going to get the targets, is going to be anywhere from 8 to 12 points a week. And if he scores, he has a higher upside past that. I don't disagree necessarily with his projection, because I'm not sure what his projection is for week 2. It's 11.14 points. I think he beats that projection. I'm looking at Sleeper for Dynasty half PPR. But I think that he can beat that projection. I think he's 13. If Juju, I guess here's my take. If Juju scores 13 points this week, are you going to be shocked? And if he's 13 points and he's probably in your flex, how is he a dud? So I'm not necessarily arguing that I'm not arguing against him being a wide receiver 1 or 2. I'm arguing against your take that he's going to be a dud.
I just think he's a dud.
Valid argument there. I'll give you that. All right. So my dud receiver, and I argued your dud receiver because I knew you were going to argue mine.
Yeah.
And it's an easy one to argue. I'm not going to lie. There's going to be a lot of people that listen to this that probably don't like this take unless they're playing this player. But my dud, I'm arguing this first off against projections where he's projected to score this week and over where he's drafted. This is a player that if you drafted him, you're going to start him. I get that. And you should. Stephon Diggs, week 2, matching up against Xavier Howard, the reigning defensive player of the year, who's going to be all over him like white on rice, fat on cake, whatever little moniker you want to use. That Miami defense is led by a defensive head coach is very, very good. And I think the offense can keep their offense off the field a little bit. They play some ball control. They're not just all deep shots. So I look at that game and I look at Diggs, who obviously is going to get the targets, and you could almost turn my argument back around on me because he's going to get the targets. But unlike Juju, Diggs is a guy who is projected to score somewhere from 16 to 18 points weekly. And I don't know that he hits that mark. Does he hit 8 or 9, 10, 11? Yeah, probably. But it's a really tough matchup for him this week. I got burnt last week starting a guy like Allen Robinson. He had a tough matchup against a guy like Ramsey. And although he got the targets and he got the looks and the scheme was there for him, he just couldn't capitalize because he had a really stinking good defender across from him. And I think the same thing happens to Diggs this week. Diggs is actually a guy for me that I'm trying to buy Diggs after week 2 because I don't think he's going to have a good week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not arguing too much because you kind of did a little bit of it for me. It is a hot take. Obviously, we know Diggs was the wide receiver 3, I believe, last season. He was a big reason why Josh Allen was so effective, and you're going to play him. But I think it's one of those circumstances, and we're all going to face it where our studs play tough matchups, and we just have to curb our expectation a little bit and hope that we have some upside further down the team on the bench in the flex spots that can make up for that. So if he only has 15 or 14 or 15 points and you're expecting 18, 19, maybe you have one of our bounce back guys that you can put in the flex and that might make up the difference kind of thing. So yeah, it's a little bit of a hot take, but that's all I would say. I would just say,
all I heard there was, I can't argue your logic because you're really smart, Evan. That's all I heard. It's all I heard spew out of your mouth right there. I'm liking my chances for this week already.
Well, I mean, you can't get worse than an F, can it? So.
it was like, I'm going to put it on 2 times speed for the grades part of this video when we go to post it out. In fact, we'll talk like chipmunks through it. No, it was brutal. Hopefully I'll get to have some of those against you. I was bold last week. Okay. I was
you were.
First episode boldness.
Yeah,
hopefully it wasn't first episode. I'm never listening to that guy again. Still was our saving grace week 1. Oh, yeah. that spewed out of my mouth like vomit.
I did. Anyways, good, bad, like good cop, bad cop. So I did say that. I did preface.
Was that another one of your good takes? Is that what you're about to say?
Well, no. Last week I had the good.
I
take.
know.
Yeah. So there you go. But it was another good take from me. Just to wrap up, I guess my dud running back.
Oh yeah, my bad. I was about to jump right over that.
That's fine. That's okay. But I think you agree with this one, so you don't have to argue it. But Josh Jacobs for the Las Vegas Raiders, he did just get an injury designation Wednesday practice, so I don't know what that is yet. It just said everything.
Everything.
So I don't know what that mean. Maybe he fell out of a building or something. But he only averaged 3.2 yards per carry. So he had, and that was against not a very good rush defense in Baltimore. I don't think, not the best anyways. It's decent. But obviously his day was made by 2 trips to the end zone. Pittsburgh aren't going to let him do that if he plays. If he doesn't play, obviously you're not playing him. But if he plays, I still wouldn't play him. I think Kenyon Drake is a better option if you're going to play a Raiders running back this week.
So I definitely agree with you there. Josh Jacobs actually barely outsnapped Drake. Now, I guess if you wanted to argue that, you could say that Jacobs had the sick designation. Now he's coming in. Jacobs is a guy that's been weird in fantasy football, right? It's almost like he's always hurt, but he's always finished as one of the top running backs so far in his career. 2 years in, he was an RB2 his rookie or RB1 last year, barely on that fringe, right? But he's already hurt. They signed Drake to some good money. It's like there's some juju going on in that situation where if I have Jacobs, I'm trying to sell, and I did today, actually, just before the everything injury update, which was pretty nice. It's pretty nice. We are going to have to wrap up real quick. We had a matchup madness for you. We're not going to go too far into this. We're just going to name them all for you. These are matchups in your NFL lineup where if you have players from either one of these teams, throw them in your lineups because there's a high likelihood that it could be a high scoring game or just a game where our fantasy relevant players are making good strides. Ian, what is your matchup madness for week 2?
Mine is Dallas versus Los Angeles Chargers. And I think you can extrapolate this for the season. Dallas are going to be in some barn burners all season. No defense, awesome offense. So, yeah, load them up.
Sorry. My matchup is New Orleans and Carolina. I think your fantasy players are going to cook in that one. Jameis, can he do it week 2? I think he can. Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, maybe even a little Terrace Marshall in that one. We'll see what happens. I don't know how good that New Orleans defense is, especially Lattimore going to have to miss a little bit of time as well. That's going to do it for week 2 of 4FF's Sake. Your fantasy football podcast that you know and now love. I hope maybe that hopefully that's one of my good takes this week. All right. Follow us on all social media platforms. We have Instagram. I'm messaging people back on Instagram. We already have people messaging, asking questions. We're doing that. We got Twitter and we're pretty active on it. And we have the TikTok where my best take of the week came there. So make sure you follow us on TikTok. All of it is for FF's sake. If you are looking for us to find podcasts, Ian, tell them where they can find us on podcast and what they have to search.
I believe it's WCDT, right? Radio. And It's on everywhere you can get your podcast, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, everywhere and anywhere.
Thank you for listening. Follow for FF's Sake on all social media platforms and search for us wherever you get your podcasts.